Hey guys, Dasia Denise here. It is a beautiful day today. As you can see, it's nice and sunny and it's not too hot. It's probably about 81 degrees Fahrenheit. And I decided to make a video outside on my back deck. This video was requested by a couple of my viewers, and they wanted to know what my experience is like being a black elder goth in the Gothic subculture. Just to let you all know, I'm going to just have a conversation with you guys, like you're sitting in front of me right on my back deck. So forgive me for the ahs, wells. I'll try to be on the lookout for that. But when I'm talking to you face to face, that's how I talk. Just to get that out of the way. First, a history lesson. I started in the goth subculture around 94, 95, so the mid-90s. And at the time, I was in art school in Atlanta, Georgia. I wasn't a goth, but I had my own sense of style. Just bright colors and patterns and bows and jewelry and all sorts of craziness. So one day I walked across the street from school to Tower Records when it still existed and they still sold cool shit. And there was a young lady tending the register, and I remember what she wore to this day. She had a black bob with straight cut bangs, like Betty Page. She had that hairstyle. She had a streak of green and a streak of purple in her hair. She wore a collar, and she wore a black t-shirt with the Cure on it, blue jeans with holes, and black chucks. So when I saw her, I knew she looked different, like a lot of the employees that worked at Tower Records. And I noticed her style, but I wasn't aware of the goth subculture. I just liked how she looked different. So I went to pay for my stuff, and she asked me, "Do you go to the Art Institute across the street?" And I said, "Yes." And she's saying, "Because I've seen you around, and you seem like a cool person. I go to school there too. Maybe we can hang out, listen to music, do stuff." I said, "Sure." So we started hanging out. We ended up being roommates a year later. But at this time, we started hanging out. We were going to bars and little holes in the wall where we saw goth shows. I saw Susie Sue. Actually, this is when she was with the Creatures on stage there. And we just had a good old time, and I met other alternative people. Anyway, this young lady was the person that introduced me to The Cure, Susie Sue, Peter Murphy, the Black Box CD collection that was real popular at the time with us alternative folks. And I heard the music, and I loved the dark, ethereal feel to it, and I fell in love with goth music immediately. I was already into Depeche Mode and New Order, Joy Division, and a lot of the 80s new wave bands. So this just added a darker feel to it, and the swirling guitars and the moody lyrics, and I just died and went to hell. So I've been a goth ever since. Have I experienced racism in the Gothic subculture? Honestly, I have not. And I think part of the reason is that our group was so tiny. I would say no more than 10 of us identified as goths. And we might not even have said the word then, but no more than 10 of us were actually heavily into goth music. We did hang out with the other freaks, which included skaters, hippies, metalheads, just all sorts of wackadoodle people. So in Atlanta at that time, you basically had your weirdos and your normal people. I won't say there wasn't any racism that was going on at the time. I just was lucky enough not to experience it. And I think a big part of that is our group was so small, and even the freaks in the town was a minority of the culture and the population of Atlanta that we just stuck together. I had friends of all races, Hispanic, Asian, white, a couple other black folks. They weren't goth, but they were into alternative stuff. So, and it was cool because we were just this small circle of weirdos. So I didn't experience racism within the goth subculture, thankfully. Now, I did experience racism in the normal world, but I have to say, a big part of my struggle at the time, unfortunately, was other black people. Before I continue, I must say this. Black Americans in particular have been stuck with this stereotype that we're oversexed and hypersexual and that we're just uncivilized and savage and can't control ourselves and we just want to have sex and cause destruction. That's the meaning of our lives. And that stereotype always struck me as bizarre because what people don't understand is a lot of black people are conservative. Maybe not politically, but socially, a lot of us are conservative. A lot of black people are religious and superstitious. I am neither, so I haven't felt part of the black community as a whole in years, really. Even before I was goth, even now. You know, I got the whole, oh, you're worshiping the devil, and that's evil, and you need to get down on your knees and pray to Jesus, and all this other foolishness. And what's funny is, I'm an atheist now, but at the time, I was a Christian. But I was a weirdo, so I wasn't the right type of Christian. Whatever. Another thing I got major shit for was even listening to rock and roll in the first place. Which, if I remember correctly, I think black people had a little something to do with the invention of rock and roll. And people don't want to admit this, which is weird, but it's true. You know, rock and roll is rhythm and blues plus country. It's that mixture, and you wouldn't have rock and roll without black people. Seriously. In fact, back in my grandmother's day, it was called nigger music. So this idea that black people who listen to rock and roll or white music, it's so ridiculous. White people listen to jazz, they listen to blues, they listen to rap, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's music. Music, I believe music brings people together. Seriously. So my struggle was really just with normal society in general and the normal black community in particular. Now, I've also come across elitist goths. Not many. They were in the vast minority, but I still dealt with them. I didn't start wearing black clothes or dressing goth immediately. I was listening to the music. I was getting to know the subculture. I still had my bright Cyndi Lauper-esque style going on. So, you know, people would question me. Oh, you're not really goth, or that's really, you're doing it wrong, blah, blah, blah. And I was new to the subculture, so I wasn't sure how to respond. And I really didn't respond. I just thought, well, that's pretty shitty. But, oh well, I kind of ended up just kept listening to music and ignoring them and hanging out with my friends. So that's how I dealt with elitism, was just ignored them. So, that's how I dealt with being a black goth then. Wasn't an elder, of course. I was just in my early 20s. But now I'm an elder at the age of 43. So how do I handle being a black elder goth now? I think what's really helped me is learning to be comfortable with myself. Just owning my shit, basically. Accepting the things that I like, even though the outside world doesn't like them or say I shouldn't be doing this or whatever. And also owning up to my weaknesses. That's important as well. I'm very sensitive, and if I don't check myself, I can take things wrong and really get in a weird headspace that the world is against me and fuck the world. And being angry at the world is not necessarily a bad thing. It helps you not tolerate bullshit. But if you leave the anger unchecked, then it starts to wear on you and you become bitter and angry. And there's nothing wrong with having those emotions. I just don't want them to define me as a person. Another one is I had to really learn to love myself. And that, it sounds cliche, but it's cliche for a reason. I had this horrible habit, like many of us do, not just goths, but many people do, in that when people insulted me, I took that to heart and it hurt my feelings. But when people complimented me, I kind of said, oh, thanks, and kind of brushed that off and then didn't take that seriously. And I had to ask myself, why don't I switch those around? People who complimented me and it was true, I swallow that up. You can never compliment me too many times. Just putting that out there. And then the insults, I don't take seriously. And I'm not talking about constructive criticism. I'm talking about insults. Oh, you're ugly and you got ugly nappy hair, blah, blah, blah. Go pound sand as far as I'm concerned with that. So I guess what I'm saying is I finally took some time to myself to really figure out what makes me tick. What makes me angry and why? What makes me sad and why? What makes me happy and why? And these are questions that will never get resolved, possibly. Because I'm a work in progress, and so are you, and so is your next door neighbor and random guy down the street. We are all a work in progress. So I say that because this asking why and answering, you're going to be doing that for the rest of your life. That's how you grow as a person, and no one dies perfect. No one's born perfect, no one lives perfect, and no one dies perfect. Lastly, I'd like to say how I deal with being a Black elder goth is I just own it. I am not mainstream. I don't want to be mainstream. Sometimes I feel misunderstood and I feel disconnected from society. And if I let it, it can get to me. I think owning your shit and loving yourself, I would start there. I encourage everyone, whether you're goth or not, to take time and just think about yourself and just think of how you work. I feel like a lot of people don't do this. They don't self-reflect. And it's a big part of improving as a human being. I also don't tolerate disrespect. I treat my humanity like gold. And that's because your humanity is the most valuable thing you possess, period. And you have to own it and you have to love it and cherish it. Because if you don't, you can't really expect anyone else to. So I hope this video was helpful. Thanks for watching. Love and shimmies. Until next time.